Is it illegal to share what your rate of pay is to your fellow employees in the workplace? And more importantly, can an employer prohibit you from doing so? Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to give you the answer. Hey everybody, if you're not familiar with me, my name is Brian from A Life After Layoff. I'm a corporate recruiter, an HR professional, and a career coach. And on this channel, I share a lot of career advice and how to get hired into your dream job. So if you're interested in career-related content, maybe hit that subscribe button and follow along. So on Twitter, somebody shared a picture of a posting that management put up, I guess, in a break room. And I want to share with you what the posting says, but more importantly, I want to share with you how the employees responded to it because it's pretty funny and pretty classic. So here's the posting, and I can only assume that this was put up maybe in a break room or something where all the employees could see it, but it starts off with, "Attention all subordinates." I mean, who addresses their employees as subordinates? You lowly subordinates. That's the first thing that cracks me up. This first thing I noticed when I saw it is like just very off-putting, the tone from management to the staff. And then they said, effective immediately, conversing about wages, both on duty or off duty, is strictly forbidden. This is considered proprietary information and as such is protected legally. If you are overheard speaking or listening to a conversation in which wages are discussed, you will receive disciplinary action up to and including termination. So that's the threat, right? And then as a reminder, Kentucky is an at-will state, meaning your employment can be terminated for any reason without legal repercussion or no reason. So, and then it says, if you have any questions, ask Jer. So let's break down this response a little bit before we jump into what the employees responded with. So the first thing that he's saying is that it's proprietary information and as such, it's protected legally. Now, is the wage data proprietary? Absolutely. It is proprietary information, and an employer has a reasonable expectation to not want their wage data to go out to the public, right? Because it's competitive advantage. If another gym knows what they're paying, another gym might be able to outbid them, although there are ways to find that out. But in general, an employer tries to keep their salary data under wraps. However, yes, it's proprietary information. No, it is not protected legally. It is up to the employer to keep it under wraps by not sharing spreadsheets of wage data, preferably with their employees, but also with their competitors. They really don't want to do that. But you can't prohibit somebody from sharing. There's no way that you can go into a break room and demand that everybody not share their wages. And we'll talk about the legal implications of this in just a second. So that's the first thing. The proprietary information is absolutely true. However, it's only proprietary to the company. Nobody else looks at it as proprietary information. And if a competitor wanted to get their hands on it, it's shame on the company for not having tight control over their wage data. But if an employee goes out and starts talking about their wages, there's absolutely nothing that the employer can do about that. You can't control that. So then he says, if you're overheard speaking, listening to a conversation in which wage data is discussed, then you could be terminated in disciplinary action. So let's just circle that. We'll come back to that because that's essentially you're being threatened. The retaliatory, if you do this, there's going to be a retaliatory consequence up to including termination. Now, the next line here, Kentucky is an at-will state, meaning that your employment can be terminated for any reason without legal repercussion. And that part's actually true because in an at-will state, an employer can terminate your employment without any cause or any notice. So basically for any reason, and I'll put an asterisk there and say any reason that's not illegal. So they can't go off and terminate you for something that would be deemed illegal based on all the different labor laws that we have. And that's why the second part of this sentence is pretty funny. It says for any reason without legal repercussion. So this employer can get into a lot of trouble terminating people if it's an illegal termination to begin with. Furthermore, on the flip side of at-will employment, an employee can quit at any time with or without notice. So there's no rule in an at-will employer state that you have to give any notices. You can quit without any reason. It's a mutual two-way street. So if you look at it from the employer's perspective, apparently Jer here was very upset about employees sharing their wage data. And I can only imagine the kind of ogering that Jerry does in his day-to-day management of this business, and certainly does not inspire confidence in his ability to be an effective leader if this is his style, especially with the condescending attention all subordinates and then this threat. I don't know if he thinks that this is an effective strategy to retain his employees, but his employees certainly had a strong opinion as well. So let's take a look at that. So here we have the response, and you can see at the very top, we're going to actually go over to this website in a minute, but the NLRB Gov talking about the rights, your employment rights, about discussing wage data. So we'll dig into that, the legalese, in here in just a second. But the employees, they respond with "Yo, Jerry Barry," and they've got these like communism flag, communism emblems up at the top. It's just like really just kind of digging at him. Seeing as how you're the manager in the great and illustrious word of Planet Fitness gym franchises. So I will say this is probably not all Planet Fitnesses. So before you go with your pitchforks and your torches to go knock on Planet Fitness's corporate headquarters, this is probably just an individual franchisee, and that franchisee clearly does not know anything about employment law. Clearly needs some retraining on leadership as well. But anyway, it says that it may behoove you to become familiar with the laws pertaining to it, and I 100% agree with them. This manager is a danger to his organization and needs to be swiftly reprimanded and coached on employment law, because this is absolutely going to get him in legal trouble. Speaking legalese and word salad across an 8.5 by 11 paper you printed does not a legal document make. So absolutely true on that as well. Since research ain't your forte, and honestly, it's pretty sad that this employer decided to publish this as if it's the gospel, because it really only takes 30 seconds to Google this to find the answer. But I've included a link of pertinent documents on the left, top, right, and bottom of this page, so it's really kind of hard to miss. Needless to say, if you can't legally tell us not to discuss wages in the good old US of A, and that's true, we will continue to do so. Furthermore, for the sake of making this a little bit more streamlined, shall we? And here we go. They go into each person's individual compensation, and there's even some people who not only added their names in type, but they actually also, some people, it looks like, who were late to the party, literally signed their name and what their wage rate is. So this is really great. And what I'm seeing is the wage spread from $10.50 to $12.50 an hour, and maybe the people who are getting $12.50 an hour were maybe team leads or something. You know, it's not a huge spread of compensation. So I'm sitting here wondering why Jerry is making such a big hubbub about a relatively minor spread in salary and comp ranges between his staff. But nonetheless, he decided to throw a nuclear bomb at this thing. And effectively, I would imagine they probably had 100% turnover after this. But anyway, it says the rest of your subordinates could not be reached, but they're welcome to post their wage above. Apparently, the other subordinates came later and wrote their names in pen. So then, love, $10.50 an hour, Shelley. Kudos to you, Shelley, for going above and beyond and making the wage data very clear for everybody so that there was no misconstruing whether or not the employees had gotten your message. So, Jerry, I hope that you went and you checked out some of these links, because you desperately need it, and you should go maybe take a course, maybe Franklin Covey or Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, because your management style pretty much sucks. So let's jump into the NLRB and take a look at what the law is around this. And if you're not familiar with the National Labor Relations Board, it's a national, so it's a federal board that oversees employee and labor relations. So here we have it right under their website, your rights to discuss your wages. So under the NLRB or the NLRA or the Act, the employees have the right to communicate with other employees in their workplace about wages. Wages are a vital term and condition of employment, and discussion of wages is often preliminary to organizing or other actions for mutual aid or protection. The NLRB was established originally to help employees basically organize, because back in the day there were union busters, and honestly it's still happening now with like Starbucks and a few other places that are really taking an aggressive stance against unionization. But there was essentially bullies or Pinkertons that would show up to these unionizing attempts along about 100 years ago, and they would literally beat people up if they tried to organize. In some cases, people got killed, lost their lives. So the NLRB was formed to put some control and to protect the worker, because these industrialists, Carnegies of the world, were very aggressive in their treatment of the workplace and preserving their right to profitability and basically suppressing workers' rights. And if you're an employee who's covered by the Act, and most people are covered by the Act, there's only a few select groups that are not, you may discuss wages in face-to-face conversations and in written messages. So technically, the employee's response at Planet Fitness was completely legal and completely within their rights. The only stipulation is that you can potentially get in trouble with the employer if you're doing it with their company property. So if you're sending it through the corporate email or something like that, you can do it outside of their their infrastructure, but in general, that's one of the only stipulations. However, policies that specifically prohibit the discussion of wages are unlawful. So Jer, with his policy about not being able to discuss his wages, could actually get him in some legal hot water. You may have the discussions about wages when not at work, when you're on break, or even during work if the employees are permitted to have other non-work conversations. So if you're standing in a production line, you're working at a Starbucks, and you got your coworkers around you, if you're allowed to have conversations that are not work related, you're kind of shooting the breeze with the person next to you, then it's reasonable expectation that you're allowed to talk about your wages. And the NLRB would find that that's perfectly acceptable. So the most important thing here is that you have these rights whether or not you are represented by a union. So you don't have to be in a union, you don't have to be represented by a bargaining unit to have the right to talk about your wages. So that means that everybody has the right to talk about their wages if they choose to do so. And it continues, when you and another employee have a conversation or communication about your pay, it is unlawful for your employer to punish or retaliate against you in any way for having the conversation. So Jerry threatening termination if he catches you talking about your wages is also highly illegal. It's also unlawful for your employee to interrogate you about your conversation, threaten you for having had it, or put you under surveillance for such conversations, because essentially that's union busting tactics. It's hard tactics, and employers are not allowed to, if an employee starts to meet with other employees for the purposes of collective bargaining, they have to be hands off. There are ways that they can address it, but they have to be very careful with it. Additionally, it is unlawful for an employer to have a work role policy or hiring agreement that prohibits employees from discussing their wages with each other, or that requires you to get the employer's permission to have these discussions. If your employer does any of these things, a charge may be filed against the employer with the NLRB. And basically what happens is the NLRB then comes in, does an investigation, and they may actually recommend going to litigation. And if a case is egregious enough, so if Jerry is actually terminating people at this Planet Fitness, the NLRB could actually come in and sue Planet Fitness on the employee's behalf. So they don't even have to go out and get attorneys. The NLRB will actually bring this suit against the employer. So it's a really big deal. And if somebody's not coaching him, and it clearly sounds like there's no HR at this Planet Fitness franchise, but it is a very serious thing that he is doing, and it's highly illegal. So it sounds to me like this manager really needs to be reeled in. Otherwise, he's going to cause some significant legal problems for Planet Fitness. So the moral of the story is if you want to talk about your wages or what your salary is with your fellow employees, there's almost no circumstance where you're not able to do that and have the legal protection of the NLRB behind you. So share away if that's what you want to do. I would just probably avoid doing it on company phones or company computers. So anyway, I hope that this helps. And if you're working for a person like Jerry and you want to upgrade your situation, that is actually something that I specialize in, because I have a website called alifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks, all from an insider's perspective, on how to land your dream job, how to write a resume, how to get through the hiring process. I've also got some courses to that end that will help you get through your employment journey, and there's links to all that stuff in my website. I also offer some private one-on-one coaching, so if you're interested in getting more personalized help with your situation, you can reach me through my website for that as well. And I'll put a little asterisk here and say, if you're somebody that is dealing with a situation that you think is illegal, I would recommend that you reach out to a local labor attorney in your area to get legal advice, because nothing of what I've said should be construed as legal advice. Thank you for watching, and if you want to help support the channel, a thumbs up and a comment really does go a long way to helping the algorithm push my messages out to a broader audience, and it helps me continue doing what I'm doing. It takes me a pretty long time to make one of these videos, and it only takes a second to hit that like button, so I do appreciate it. Hey, appreciate watching. We'll see you on the next one.